We're going to talk through how to use the hedge cutter safely. We're going to talk about the PPE and the safety requirements, how to look over the machine to make sure it's safe to use, and safe operation, and then how we would make sure the machine's all clean and tidy, ready to put away, so it's ready for the next user. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing is we pick up the machine, need to check it over to make sure it's in good order, ready to use. So we always keep a guard on because the blades can be incredibly sharp, so it stops you cutting them, but it also will stop the blades getting damaged whilst in the van and in storage. So we'll slide that cover off. We can have a look at the blades, check there's no blades or teeth missing, any particularly jagged edges that would perform badly. You can very carefully just feel the edge of the blades to see if they've got a good edge on them. Now if this was a brand new hedge cutter, you wouldn't want to do that because they are razor sharp, but after a bit of use you can sort of carefully handle them safely and get a good sense of whether they need sharpening or not. Okay, so we've got the tip protector. That's so you can cut hedges right up against the wall or a fence, for example. In the reciprocating blades aren't going to be smashing the hedge, so we want to make sure that's in place. We want to make sure all the bolts are where you would expect them to be and there's none missing. You can flip it over and look at the other side as well. Again, everything's there as you'd expect it to be. Now as I'm inspecting the tip of this particular one, you can see there's quite a bit of damage there on those. Perfectly serviceable, but you'd be sort of looking at that and thinking it might be time to sharpen these blades up. There's also quite a lot of build-up of residue from sap. You can get special chemicals to clean that off, but quite honestly they're really expensive, and what we tend to do is spray it with WD-40 before and after use, run the machine up, and the blades will kind of coat themselves in WD-40. That's generally good enough, unless it is a really thick build-up, then you might have to get them cleaned up with like a chemical spray that dissolves all that. Okay, so going down the machine, again just sort of looking over it, you're looking to make sure everything's as you'd expect it to see. There's no obvious sort of springs that are broken. That's going to stop it sort of, the vibration going through to the handles. That's the vibration dampening springs. The case is all on there as you'd expect it to be. You've got the covers, that's inside there's the air filter, choke knob, and the primer button, again all as it should be. Starter cord, no excessive fraying, so that's in good order. And then you've got the exhaust cover on there, and you can see a tiny bit of a crack there where there's a little bit of plastic being broken off. But again, perfectly serviceable. You're not going to be able to touch that hot exhaust with your skin or your clothing during use, so that's fine. You want to be keeping an eye on that, and if it got much worse you'd end up having to replace that whole cover to make sure that's safe to use. Okay, you've got the controls. So this particular one, you can actually spin this back handle around during use, so that pulls out, and you can turn the handle 180 degrees to whichever position is most comfortable. We'll have a look at that later. You got your stop-start control. You press it to stop it, it automatically flicks back to the on position. And you've got your dead man's handle. So that's the throttle control on the bottom, but that won't move until you've got the top button pressed down. So that makes sure your hand is always on it before you can increase the throttle and get the blades moving. Okay, so that machine is good to go. Okay, so we've checked the machine over, we're happy that it's good to go. We need to observe the warning signs, the safety signs. So there's two different types of signs we've got on this machine. Every machine should have this sticker on it that sort of denotes the PPE you need to use and any kind of particular dangers that are posed by that machine. So if we look at the blue ones first, those signs that are in blue means you have to follow those, and in this case it's reading the manual that's supplied by the supplier when you buy the machine, and also it's showing you the PPE that you must wear whilst using this machine. And in this particular case it's ear defenders because of the noise from the engine, and it's eye protection, which a lot of people forget to do. They do need eye protection when you're using a hedge cutter, because the hedge can, as you're sort of cutting the hedge, you can get small little chunks of wood getting thrown off at quite some velocity and hitting you in the face, and could sort of damage your eyes. So you must remember to do that, eye protection as well as the ear defenders. So the blue signs, must follow those. The yellow signs, they're warning signs, so they're sort of showing you where the danger is going to come from whilst using this machine. So you've got a general warning sign, which is really just stating that using this machine is dangerous and you have to be careful. Then you've got a couple more specifics there, and this is the biggie. You've got a hand being mangled by a hedge cutter in that picture there, and I do know people that have cut their fingers off with these particular machines. So they're not to be trifled with. You always need to be paying close attention. So the blade is the dangerous bit, obviously, and the other one there, which you don't often see on these machines, is the inhalation of gases, noxious gases, which in this case is because the exhaust is right next to you, so you're going to be using this exhaust, and there it is there. Get that in the right direction. That's the outlet for the exhaust. It's going to be blowing it away from you, but it is still quite close to you, so you've got to be a little bit careful. Sometimes if you've got that blade inside a dense hedge, exhaust fumes can actually fill up inside the hedge, and after a while you can smell it quite strong. So it may be on occasions you just step away from the work to let any sort of build up of fumes dissipate. It's just something to be aware of. Okay, so that covers the safety signs. So we've got our PPE on. It's a good idea to wear gloves as well, although that isn't mandatory. Just a sort of a light pair of gloves. It can help when you're dealing with the clipping debris, especially if it's a hedge with spikes and prickles on it, holly and that sort of thing. And it does also contribute towards reducing any potential vibration that the machine might be putting into your hands. Okay, so we've checked the machine over, we know where the danger is, got all our PPE on. We need to start the machine. So we start the machine on the ground, make sure the blades are not sitting over gravel or something like that, because when you start the machine those blades are going to sort of start spinning straight away. Or at least they potentially could, because the choke's going to be on and the revs could kind of go quite high. So you want that in a nice safe place, not near anyone or anything that it can damage or that can damage it. We start by putting the choke on full, and then we press the primer button 3 times. And then I like to put my foot through the handle and in the other hand on that other handle, so the machine's nice and solid. You get a good firm grip on the pull cord, and you just take up the slack a little bit, and it should kick over. And once it's kicked over once like that, if you're quick enough, you can blip the throttle and it'll automatically knock the choke off. If you're not quick enough, like I wasn't there, just have to try and start it again. So this time I don't need to do the primer again, and I'm not going to put the choke on. I'm just going to give it a couple of pulls and see if it will start now that it's turned over once already. And then to turn the machine off, just hit the off button, cuts the engine, and then that off button will automatically flick itself back into the on position, ready for starting again. So I'm just going to give you a few tips now on actually using it, using the hedge cutter on the hedges, just to help you do a better job, but also avoid hurting yourself with the blade. So as you can see, I'm holding the hedge cutter with the tip down. It's resting on that tip protector. So that is a perfectly safe way to hold the machine, you know, whilst you're kind of having a rest or talking to someone or anything like that. So let's say the engine's running, we've started the machine, we're about to go and do some work. Now, one of the good tips is when you're cutting a hedge, you want it to be perfectly straight, perfectly even, if it's supposed to be a formal hedge. And one of the ways you can do that is locate a place on your person where you're going to hold that to. So it might be, for example, in this instance, just at the bottom of my rib cage, and I'm going to go along cutting this hedge, and I know wherever I am on that hedge, I'm going to maintain that on the bottom of my rib cage. So as I'm working down a hedge, I found a position on my body, and that's going to stay the same all the way down. So even if the ground sort of undulates, the hedge is going to sort of just gently follow the ground, and the hedge itself will stay at the same height. So that's one good tip. Now the other thing, when you're cutting up and down, sometimes you can find the hedge, the cutter starts to catch on the hedge itself. And one of the ways you can avoid doing that is by angling the blades very slightly into the hedge as you go up, and spin it back down as you come down, spin it back as you go up, and it just angles the blades into the hedge, so the cutting surface of the blades tends to sort of cut better and doesn't catch. And that's the same with the top as well. If you're getting to a very dense piece of hedge, if you're just going backwards and forwards level, it can be a bit hard to cut down into the hedge to reduce the height of it. So if you kind of angle it down as you're cutting down, either way, you'll find the blades will bite into the hedge more and allow that cut to take place. Okay, so the second thing is, let's say we've just cut some stuff, we got some debris on the top here, we want to clear that debris off so we can see whether we've got the hedge where we want it to go to. Now, what you must never ever do is rest the hedge cutter on the top like that and then start using a spare hand to get clippings off, because that is how you cut your fingers off. What you must do, you cut the hedge, rest it on the ground away from your person, and then you clear your debris, then you pick your machine up and you go again. Okay, so the job's been finished and we just need to make sure the machine's ready to put away. Now, what I like to do is, quite often the blades can be damp, or you could be cutting in wet conditions. These blades will rust, so especially once you put that plastic sheath back on them to protect them, this isn't going to dry out, it's just going to sit there wet. So what I like to do to kind of help prevent the rusting and to maintain the sharpness of the blades is I give them a spray of WD-40, which helps drive out any moisture. Now ideally the blades need to be offset, so what I'm going to do in this case, I'm just going to start the machine up and then move the blades a bit, then stop it in a position that's going to give me more surface area to put that spray on. So I'll just start that up quickly now. So I can now seal the blades. I'll just get my can of WD-40, down one side, down the other, just start the engine up, run the blades, that coats the blades. And now they're all got a nice coating of oil, put the sheath back on, and that's all good to go now, ready for the next user. So in summary, we've done a visual inspection of the machine to make sure it's all in safe working order. We've looked at the necessary PPE and safety precautions. We've gone over how to start the machine safely, and then we looked at a couple of tips on how to hold the machine and actually use the machine to avoid cutting yourself and causing any injury, and then spraying it up, oiling up the blade, then it's all ready to put away safely.